Reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 21, beginning at verse 20. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. He was the one who had reclined next to Jesus at the supper and had said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? Follow me." So the rumour spread in the community that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he would not die, but, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you?" This is the disciple who is testifying to these things and has written them, and we know that his testimony is true. But there are also many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. Some 20 years ago, we were invited by friends to visit and stay with them when they lived in the northeast of England. It was to be our family holiday that year, and I remember it well, the warmth of their hospitality, as well as visiting and exploring new places. I think two of the highlights for me were a visit to Lindisfarne, Holy Island, and treading in the footsteps of St Aidan, and then a few days later visiting Durham and its magnificent cathedral. The cathedral, home of the Rose Window and home of the shrine of St Cuthbert, as well as the tomb of the Venerable Bede, whose feast day we celebrate today. And set above his tomb in the cathedral in gold lettering is the text of one of his prayers, and it says this: "Christ is the morning star who, when the night of this world is past, brings to his saints the promise of the light of life and opens everlasting day." Bede was influenced by the world around him, a monk who lived in the 7th and 8th century, a scholar, the father of English learning. In what was to be his last Lent, he worked on the Gospel of John, translating it into English, completing it on the day he died. And yet sadly none of this work remains today. And so in that passage that you've just heard from John's Gospel, John writes that there were many things that Jesus did, and if every one of them were written down, I suppose the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. And yet in the many books that Bede had written, we see that passion for learning and education. We see the clear belief that he believed learning was for everyone. For Bede writes, "It is better to illuminate than merely to shine, to deliver to others contemplated truths than merely to contemplate." And so in testifying to his faith, Bede demonstrates his ability to reflect the light of Christ through the written word. You know, as we look back and glimpse into the lives of Bede and all the saints, we see people who lived very different lives to us. Lives immersed in prayer. And how can we share their desire for God? How can we bring the promise of light to others today? How can we break the word to the poor and needy so that the gift of hope can be revealed? And so we pray with Bede. Christ is the morning star, who, when the night of this world is past, brings to his saints the promise of the light of life and opens everlasting day. Amen.